Now, when I was prepping for this chat, because I love to dig into how people actually run their service, you have a section in the Abacus OS LLM model part of the site discussing how you can run it on a handful of H100 GPUs, or I think also A100s, yes.
Yep.
Reading this, talking mostly to technology founders, getting access to a small allocation of GPUs is not an impossibility.
Yep.
And the know-how to set them up and properly use them, also not an impossibility. When I think to my childhood credit union, which had great lollipops, by the way, loved that. Still remember that. I remember where it was, my hometown for some reason. I don't think they have the juice to get a GPU rack going. So my concern is this sounds awesome, but it also sounds like something that only applies to the largest banks, credit unions, and insurance companies, because to me, smaller people probably just don't have the gear for it. Is that right? Or am I being too pessimistic and behind the times?
Alex, this is why I love you, because your questions are right on. So your answer is correct, but I want you to inverse it. So if you're a big bank, think Chase or Wells Fargo, you fill in the blank, right? Those guys have the money, the talent, the infrastructure to go ahead and then get the best infrastructure that the money can buy. But if you're a credit union or a mid-tier bank, you don't have the talent or the infrastructure to do it. That's why they need a solution like Abacus, right? So even if they, figured out a way to do it, it's not a simple plug and play, press a button, it deploys to their infrastructure and they're good to go, right? There's a whole bunch of maintenance and compliance things around that. So you're absolutely spot on about, there is a technological lift to get people there. Mm-hmm. And that's why, a lot of the folks, mid-tier credit unions and banks that need that support, that's why they turn to Abacus.
What is the deposit base of a mid-tier credit union? I have no idea what the tick marks are on the axis we're describing here.
Yeah, another fantastic question. So I would say the sweet spot is between $1 billion and $3 billion in total assets, which if you're a JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, it probably sounds adorable.
Yeah,
right?
Look at your little baby bank.
Yeah, But those are the folks that really, they have the money, but they also, they have the infrastructure to think about doing something like this, but they don't have necessarily the technological capability or the staff or human capital to go ahead and deploy it.
The net interest margin on, say, $3 billion, let's call it, it's a credit union, so it's a little bit lower because they're better to you than banks are. Call it 2%. What is that, 60 million a year? Mm-hmm. So they probably have like $1 million a year IT budget, give or take. Mm-hmm. So that does put a cap on your ACV for that type of client, but it can still make it a very attractive business. So how hard is it to land those mid-tier credit unions and banks and bring them into the Abacus fold? Or sorry, the Abby fold?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And this is where, if you haven't already, Alex, you're going to be like, well, this guy's insane. So I learned early on that, if you're a customer of these banks, because people always ask me, David, how did you get these clients? How did you get your clients? This is a very hard industry to sell into.
Did you open accounts at all of them?
There you go. So I'm probably on some government list, right? Being watched by the feds, because I probably have the most open bank accounts of any person in the US. So I would open a bank account, deposit the $5, and I'd email the CEO and I'd say, hey, I'm a customer. And I promise you, if you're a founder listening, that tactic works like 95% of the time. If you email them and say you're a vendor, you almost never get a response because they get those emails all day long. Yeah. But if you say I'm a customer, it's like a 95% response rate. So that's how I would, sort of get my foot in the door, which I know sounds insane, and it is insane. I don't recommend it for everyone, but that's kind of my hacky way of going about it. And then the second way, Alex, that we get them to, use Abacus is, I tell them, and I'm going somewhere with this, I don't want them to use Abacus unless they absolutely love it, right? I want them to completely love the product, and I want it to do everything that we've told them it does. So we give them 3 months money back guarantee, right? Mm-hmm. We let them try the product. It's not something I want them to use if it's not something they absolutely love to use. And it's, we take this as a matter of personal pride, company pride, So we want our products to be tremendously useful and of tremendous quality. So, that's how, we're able to sell ourselves. Not just, hey, we're a customer of yours, or we have a strong interest in you doing well, but, our product is here to help you, and we're going to guarantee it does that.